Arrival and first impressions. Captain Jason Miller's pulse quickened as his transport pod docked smoothly at Althea Station, the massive interstellar hub hovering in the emptiness of the Andromeda Galaxy. This wasn't just any space station. Althea was the heart of diplomacy and discovery, a neutral ground where species from galaxies far and wide gathered to exchange ideas, goods, and alliances. Jason, representing Earth and humanity, was one of the few humans to ever set foot on this remarkable structure. He felt a potent mix of anticipation and pride, knowing he was carrying the hopes of Earth's future in this uncharted arena. The pod's doors slid open with a soft hiss, and a rush of sterilized air washed over him as he stepped onto the dock. The massive atrium of Althea stretched out before him, bustling with alien figures of every shape and color. Beings with glowing skin, floating limbs, and appendages he could barely comprehend glided past one another, filling the space with a quiet hum of voices and the gentle hum of unfamiliar machinery. Jason couldn't help but pause for a moment, taking it all in. It was a sight unlike any he had seen before, and he felt a surge of wonder, his human curiosity kicking in full force. "Welcome, Captain Jason Miller of Earth," a synthetic yet warm voice greeted him. Turning, he found himself face to face with an Althean administrative bot, its sleek, silver frame shimmering in the soft station lighting. The bot inclined its head, a gesture of respect Jason wasn't expecting. "You are now cleared for orientation. Please follow me to your quarters for a brief decontamination and introduction." Jason chuckled softly. "Always with the warm welcomes," he murmured, stepping forward and falling into stride behind the bot. He knew Earth was still relatively new to the galactic scene, and humanity's penchant for exploration had made them an object of fascination and caution among more advanced species. The bot led him through a series of winding corridors bathed in soft purple lights, which Jason guessed were both a calming feature and a way to neutralize potential biological contaminants. They arrived at his quarters, a spacious room with walls that glistened like liquid metal, adjusting subtly to his presence. Jason dropped his bag on the bed and peered through a large window that offered a breathtaking view of the Andromeda Galaxy's starry expanse. It was a reminder of just how far from home he was. With a steadying breath, he reminded himself that he wasn't here for himself alone. He was here to represent humanity's voice, curiosity, and boundless resilience. After a quick freshen up, Jason donned his official uniform, a tailored blend of Earth military precision and galactic fashion sensibilities. He admired the polished look in the mirror, feeling the weight of his responsibility settle on his shoulders. As he left his quarters and made his way toward the Grand Hall, he became acutely aware of the curious glances thrown his way. Though humans had started making a name for themselves, their presence here was still rare enough to draw interest from even the most seasoned diplomats. The Grand Hall was an impressive sight. Large, crystalline pillars towered over the room, casting rainbows of refracted light across the space. Alien delegates of every imaginable form gathered around, speaking in a blend of languages and tones that ranged from melodic hums to deep, resonant vibrations. Jason spotted floating orbs, multi-limbed beings with metallic sheen, and others who resembled delicate glass sculptures, their bodies refracting light as they moved. He couldn't help but grin, a natural, instinctive smile born out of awe and delight at the sheer diversity before him. "Captain Jason Miller, I presume?" He turned at the sound of a melodic voice. Standing before him was an alien unlike any he had encountered in the briefing files. She had sleek, silver-blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light, and her eyes were a striking shade of emerald. Her features were elegant, humanoid, but with a distinctive, almost ethereal quality that was undeniably captivating. "Yes, that's me," Jason replied, extending a hand instinctively before realizing he wasn't sure if handshakes or an appropriate gesture in intergalactic diplomacy. He drew his hand back awkwardly, but the alien simply tilted her head, observing him with a faint smile. "I am Lyra, diplomatic liaison for Althea Station," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that Jason found calming and intriguing all at once. "It's a pleasure to meet one of Earth's representatives in person. We don't often have humans here." Jason felt the weight of her words, aware of humanity's unique position in galactic affairs. "The pleasure's all mine, Lyra. It's an honor to represent Earth and be part of something as extraordinary as this." She gestured toward the expansive view of the Andromeda Galaxy. "Extraordinary, yes. But it's not without its challenges. Intergalactic relations can be delicate." Jason raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Good thing humans are known for being careful and subtle, right?" Lyra chuckled, a sound that reminded him of wind chimes. "Perhaps not subtle, but certainly resilient and curious. Those qualities might serve you well here." Her gaze softened, becoming more contemplative. "Tell me, Captain, what drives a human to travel light years away from their home? Curiosity alone?" Jason pondered the question, glancing at the stars outside before answering. "Curiosity, yes. But more than that, it's the possibility of something bigger. Back on Earth, we're limited by our own sky. Out here, we're limited only by what we're willing to imagine." Laura's eyes sparkled with something Jason couldn't quite place, a mix of admiration and understanding. "An admirable perspective. I have a feeling you may find what you're searching for here on Althea." Before he could respond, a chime echoed through the hall, signaling the beginning of the Galactic Unity Conference. Delegates began making their way toward a grand podium in the center of the hall, where a towering figure stood waiting to address the crowd. Lyra gave Jason a brief nod. "Good luck, Captain Miller. I'm sure we'll speak again soon." With that, she moved gracefully through the crowd, her presence leaving a lingering sense of intrigue in Jason's mind. Taking a deep breath, Jason found his place among the other delegates. The conference commenced with speeches and introductions, representatives from countless worlds pledging their cooperation and aspirations for unity. Jason listened intently, absorbing the variety of perspectives and philosophies being shared. It was clear that despite their differences, there was a shared desire for understanding, a foundation upon which even the most distinct civilizations could find common ground. As the speeches continued, Jason's gaze wandered, his thoughts drifting back to Lyra. There was something about her, a spark, a warmth, that made him feel unexpectedly at ease in this alien environment. He wondered if he would have the chance to speak with her again, to learn more about her world and perhaps share a little more of Earth's own curious culture. The conference session finally concluded, and Jason found himself at a post-conference gathering where delegates mingled more freely. Alien delicacies and unfamiliar drinks were being passed around, and Jason, ever curious, accepted a shimmering glass offered by a cheerful, green-skinned server. "Try it," the server insisted in a deep, melodic voice. "It's called Starfire Essence, specialty of the Zorith Galaxy." Jason took a cautious sip and felt a warm, tingling sensation spread through him. The drink's effects were immediate, loosening his nerves and making the world seem a little brighter. He scanned the room, hoping to catch another glimpse of Lyra, but she was nowhere in sight. Instead, he found himself in conversation with a delegate from a species he'd never encountered, their body composed of translucent, shifting crystals. They communicated through flashes of colored light and musical hums, and while the language barrier was challenging, Jason found himself enthralled by the experience. After some time, he excused himself and made his way back to his quarters, his mind buzzing with new impressions and the excitement of what was to come. As he settled into bed, staring out at the endless stars beyond his window, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. He drifted off to sleep, visions of strange worlds and shimmering eyes filling his mind. An unexpected crisis. Jason's eyes snapped open to the jarring sound of blaring alarms. The deep hum echoed throughout Althea Station, vibrating through the walls and rousing him instantly. He sat up, heart pounding, his military instincts kicking in. This wasn't an ordinary alarm. Something was wrong. Slipping into his uniform and securing his communicator, Jason was out the door before he'd fully processed his own tension. In the corridor, a computerized voice echoed through the station. "Attention, all delegates. A security breach has been detected in Sector 3. All personnel, please remain in your quarters until further notice." Jason frowned. Sector 3 housed the primary data banks for the conference, a vital and highly secure area where classified information on interstellar relations and alliances was stored. Whatever was happening, it was serious. As he considered his next move, a sharp knock startled him. Jason quickly palmed the door control, and it slid open to reveal Lyra, her usually calm expression strained with worry. Her silver-blue skin seemed paler, and her eyes held a flicker of urgency. "Captain Miller," she said, her voice tense. "I need your help." Without hesitation, Jason motioned her inside, sealing the door behind them. "What's going on, Lyra? What kind of breach are we talking about?" Lyra paced briefly, visibly trying to gather her thoughts. "An unknown entity has managed to bypass the station's primary security systems. They've accessed Sector 3 and have compromised critical data from multiple worlds. The Council believes it may be an inside job, someone here, among the delegates." Jason's mind raced. An inside job? But isn't everyone screened before being allowed on board? "Yes, but there are layers to this," she explained, her tone grave. "Whoever is responsible has access to technology we've never seen before. If they escape with that data, it could destabilize alliances that have taken centuries to establish. Worse, they might have information about Earth's own entry protocols into interstellar space." The weight of her words hit Jason with full force. This was more than just a security breach. It was a threat to the entire galactic order, and Earth's position in it. He set his jaw, determination hardening his features. "What do you need me to do?" Lyra's gaze softened with relief. "You're one of the few here with combat experience. The station's security protocols are locked down, but I've arranged for us to get special access to a restricted area near Sector 3. I need you to come with me and help contain this threat." Jason nodded without hesitation. "Lead the way." They moved swiftly through the station, ducking through access corridors and avoiding the main atriums, where panic had begun to spread among the delegates. Jason noticed that the usual hum of diplomatic chatter had been replaced by anxious whispers and guarded looks. Tension filled the air, thick and tangible, as beings of every shape and color clustered in small groups, some visibly disturbed, while others seemed to scan their surroundings with wariness. Eventually, they reached a secured access point guarded by a tall, imposing figure clad in armor that shimmered like molten silver. Lyra spoke to him in a language Jason couldn't understand, and after a moment's hesitation, the guard granted them passage. They entered a narrow hallway leading towards Sector 3, the lights dimmed to an ominous shade of red. "Lyra," Jason murmured as they moved quietly, "you mentioned this could be an inside job. Any idea who might be behind it?" Her gaze was steady, but Jason could see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "There are suspicions, but no solid evidence. Recently, there's been a faction advocating for tighter restrictions on new species joining the Galactic Coalition. They believe humanity's rapid advancement poses a threat to traditional alliances. I fear this breach might be their attempt to create chaos, to make a point." Jason's jaw tightened. The thought of Earth being used as a pawn in galactic politics left a bitter taste in his mouth. So were the scapegoats. "Not if we can stop them." Her tone was resolute. "Here," she said, handing him a small, sleek device. "It's an Althean neural link device. It'll allow you limited access to our security systems, tracking, communication, and, if necessary, self-defense measures." Jason examined the device, impressed by its lightweight design and intuitive controls. He clipped it onto his wrist, and a subtle hum confirmed it was activated. He felt a brief pulse in his mind, as if the device was syncing with his thoughts, and he immediately grasped its functionality. "Let's go," he said, his gaze hardening as he mentally prepared for what lay ahead. As they moved further into the restricted area, they began to hear faint, unearthly sounds, a blend of metallic scraping and low-frequency hums. Jason's instincts told him they were close to the intruder. They crept forward, pressing against the wall as they approached the data chamber's entrance. Lyra gestured for him to hold his position and raised her hand, activating a scanning device that emitted a faint, bluish light. "There," she whispered, pointing to a cloaked figure at the far end of the chamber. The figure was hunched over a console, fingers moving rapidly across holographic controls, seemingly oblivious to their presence. Jason noted the figure's height and movements. They were eerily fluid, almost too graceful, even for most advanced species he'd encountered. Jason's voice was a low murmur. "What's our approach? We don't know what kind of tech they're packing." Lyra took a deep breath, her gaze steady but her voice laced with uncertainty. "I'll try to disable the console remotely. If I can shut it down, they'll lose access to the data, and we'll have a chance to apprehend them before they escape." Jason nodded, keeping his eyes locked on the figure. "Do it. I'll cover you." As Lyra moved silently toward the control panel, Jason crouched behind a nearby pillar, the neural link device primed for any signs of movement from their target. Suddenly, a faint alarm chimed on Lyra's device, and the intruder froze, head snapping up to scan the room. The silence was electric. Jason held his breath, his senses on high alert. The figure hesitated, then turned and fixed its gaze on them, a pair of piercing, ice-blue eyes that seemed to cut through the darkness. With a flick of the figure's wrist, a blinding flash of light filled the room. Jason instinctively shielded his eyes, but in that split second, the intruder made their move, sprinting toward the far exit. He barely had time to react before the neural link pulsed, alerting him to the intruder's movements. "Lyra, they're heading for the exit," he shouted, his voice echoing off the metallic walls. Lyra dashed to the console, her fingers flying across the controls as she worked to initiate a lockdown. The heavy metal doors began to close, but the intruder moved with a speed and agility that defied physics, slipping through the narrowing gap just in time. Jason bolted after them, adrenaline flooding his veins. He charged down the corridor, the neural link feeding him data on the intruder's location. Ahead, he could just make out the figure's shadowy form weaving through the maze-like passages of Sector 3. "Jason, wait." Lyra's voice crackled through the neural link. "They've triggered a cloaking field ahead. Don't go in alone." But Jason barely heard her, his focus singularly fixed on the intruder. He rounded a corner, only to be met by an impenetrable wall of darkness. He activated the neural link's visual enhancers, but even they struggled to penetrate the dense field. He took a cautious step forward, every sense on high alert. The faint sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, and he could feel the presence of the intruder close by. Suddenly, a flash of movement to his left caught his attention, and he spun, just in time to see the intruder's outstretched hand reaching for him. In an instant, Jason dropped to one knee, dodging the strike and countering with a swift blow to the intruder's midsection. The figure stumbled back, momentarily disoriented, and Jason seized the opportunity to grab hold of their cloak, pulling it away to reveal the intruder's true form. The being before him was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Their skin was a metallic shade, reflecting the dim light, and their features were sharp, almost predatory. A series of intricate tattoos glowed faintly along their arms, pulsing with a strange energy that Jason could only assume was some form of advanced technology. The intruder smirked, their expression cold and calculating. "Impressive, human. I didn't expect your species to have such tenacity." Jason's grip tightened, his voice steady. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" The figure's smirk widened, and they leaned in close, their voice a whisper that sent chills down Jason's spine. "We are the vanguard of purity. Your species has no place among us, and soon neither will you." With a sudden burst of energy, the intruder broke free, a surge of raw power flinging Jason backward. He hit the ground hard, the impact rattling his bones. Before he could recover, the intruder had vanished into the shadows, leaving only the faintest trace of their unsettling presence behind. Groaning, Jason forced himself to his feet, his vision swimming as he tried to regain his bearings. A soft glow appeared beside him, and he looked up to see Lyra's concerned face, her hand outstretched to help him up. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. Jason nodded, wincing as he dusted himself off. "Yeah, but we've got a bigger problem than we thought. The Vanguard of Purity. They're here, and they're targeting Earth." Lyra's expression darkened, her gaze hardening with resolve. "Then we need to stop them, whatever it takes." As they made their way back toward the main station, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger threat. But one thing was clear: humanity's place in the galaxy was under siege, and he would do whatever it took to protect it. Unveiling the Vanguard's secrets. The morning after the tense encounter in Sector 3, Jason awoke with a sense of urgency that felt like an electric current humming beneath his skin. Althea Station's artificial sunrise was only just beginning, casting a warm glow over the metallic walls of his quarters. He barely had time to gather his thoughts before his communicator chimed. Lyra's voice, tense but steady, filled the room. "Jason, meet me in the Central Command Center as soon as you're able. We have a new lead." Without a moment's hesitation, Jason grabbed his uniform and headed out. The events of the previous night replayed in his mind, especially the unnerving encounter with the intruder who called themselves part of the Vanguard of Purity. The name echoed ominously, raising questions that only deepened his resolve. He needed answers, not just for the sake of Earth's future, but to unravel the deeper mystery of what humanity's presence in the galaxy truly meant. He arrived at the Central Command Center to find Lyra standing over a holographic display, her expression unreadable as she studied a series of symbols that glowed with an unnatural, pulsating light. A few other senior delegates and analysts, their faces grave, stood nearby, whispering to one another in hushed tones. Lyra looked up as Jason approached, her gaze softening slightly. "Jason, thank you for coming so quickly. We've managed to gather some intelligence on the Vanguard, and, well, it's worse than we initially thought." Jason's brow furrowed. "How so?" Lyra activated a series of holographic panels, each one displaying a different image. The first was a symbol, a dark, angular insignia that looked like interlocking blades. The second was an image of several alien beings dressed in sleek armor similar to that worn by the intruder Jason had encountered. "These are the symbols and identifying markers of the Vanguard of Purity," Lyra explained, her tone grim. "They're a covert faction that believes in maintaining a pure galaxy, one without the influence of lesser species. They oppose the integration of new civilizations, and they believe humanity's rapid ascension threatens the established order." Jason felt a cold chill run down his spine. "So they're extremists." Lyra nodded. "Precisely. And their influence is spreading faster than we anticipated. They've infiltrated multiple sectors across the galaxy, and it seems they've been quietly gathering data on newly integrated species, assessing vulnerabilities and potential threats. Their ultimate goal is to destabilize these new societies, forcing them to withdraw or face eradication." Jason clenched his fists. "And Earth is on their list." "Unfortunately, yes," she confirmed, her voice heavy. "Our encounter last night confirmed it, but there's more. We believe the Vanguard has a hidden base somewhere within the asteroid belts surrounding Althea Station. It's possible that they've been watching the conference from a distance, monitoring and intervening as they see fit." Jason took a deep breath, processing the gravity of their situation. "So, what's our next move?" Lyra turned to the assembled team and signaled to a tall, slender alien with emerald skin and eyes like polished obsidian. The being, a tactical analyst named Zeri, stepped forward and projected a map of the asteroid belts surrounding the station. "We've identified a series of anomalous energy signatures within these coordinates," Zeri explained, gesturing to a cluster of small red dots on the map. "It's likely that one of these signatures belongs to the Vanguard's base, However, the asteroids create natural interference, making it nearly impossible to pinpoint their exact location without closer investigation. Jason studied the map, nodding thoughtfully. "So we're looking at a reconnaissance mission?" "Yes," Lyra replied, "but it won't be easy. The Vanguard has technology that can cloak their base and scramble any direct signals, so we'll need to move carefully. We've put together a small task force, and we'd like you to be part of it." Jason didn't hesitate. "I'm in." The briefing continued, detailing the dangers and precautions they would need to take. Jason felt a growing sense of urgency and anticipation. This mission could be a turning point in their fight against the Vanguard. After they finalized the details, the team dispersed to prepare, each member carrying the weight of the mission's importance. An hour later, Jason found himself aboard a sleek scout vessel designed for stealth and agility. Lyra joined him in the cockpit, her demeanor calm yet focused. The vessel hummed to life as they navigated through the vast, dark expanse of space toward the asteroid belt. The atmosphere was tense, each passing moment bringing them closer to potential danger. As they entered the asteroid field, Jason took a moment to marvel at the sight. Massive rocks floated around them, their surfaces scarred and pitted, illuminated only by the faint glow of distant stars. Some were small, barely the size of a shuttle, while others loomed like miniature planets, their irregular shapes casting ominous shadows. "We're approaching the first set of coordinates," Lyra announced, her fingers gliding over the controls as she adjusted their trajectory. Jason glanced at her, a question lingering in his mind. "Lyra, you seem personally invested in this mission. Is there a reason?" Lyra hesitated, her gaze fixed on the controls. After a moment, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I lost someone to the Vanguard. A friend, a fellow diplomat. He believed in integration, in creating a galaxy where all beings could coexist. They eliminated him when he stood in their way." Jason felt a pang of sympathy, his own resolve hardening. "I'm sorry, Lyra, and I promise, we'll bring them down." She nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that." They continued in silence, the weight of their shared purpose strengthening their resolve. As they approached the coordinates, Lyra activated the ship's advanced scanning systems, sweeping the area for any trace of the Vanguard's presence. The results came back negative, but they pressed on, checking each location with careful precision. Finally, after what felt like hours of searching, they reached the last set of coordinates. As they began their scan, the console beeped, indicating a faint energy reading. Lyra's eyes widened. "We have something." Jason leaned forward, his heart pounding. "Is it them?" "It matches the Vanguard's energy signature," she confirmed. "But the signal is weak. They're using cloaking technology to mask their location." Jason took a steadying breath, adrenaline flooding his system. "Let's get closer." As they maneuvered the vessel toward the source, the faint outline of a structure began to appear on their scanner, a hidden base nestled within the hollow of a massive asteroid. Its dark, angular shape blended almost perfectly with the surrounding rock, making it nearly invisible to the naked eye. Lyra's fingers flew over the controls, activating the ship's stealth mode. "We'll need to disable their cloaking field if we want to get a clear view. If we can disrupt their systems, we might be able to gather intel before they realize we're here." Jason nodded, his mind already working through the possibilities. "Can we access their systems remotely?" Lyra shook her head. "Their technology is too advanced for that. We'll have to do this a hard way." They donned their lightweight spacesuits, equipped with magnetic boots and minimal oxygen reserves, and prepared to exit the ship. As the hatch opened, Jason felt the vast emptiness of space pressing in around him, an intense silence broken only by the sound of his own breathing. He activated his boots, feeling the magnetic pull against the asteroid's surface, and carefully began his approach toward the hidden base. Lyra followed close behind, her movements precise and controlled. Together, they reached the outer wall of the structure and found an access hatch concealed by layers of rock. Jason worked quickly, using a laser cutter to break through the security panel. The hatch hissed open, and they slipped inside, entering a dimly lit corridor that pulsed with an eerie, greenish light. As they moved deeper into the base, they passed rooms filled with advanced weaponry, surveillance equipment, and alien technology that Jason couldn't begin to understand. It was clear that the Vanguard had resources beyond anything Earth had encountered, a chilling reminder of the stakes they faced. Suddenly, they heard footsteps echoing down the corridor. Jason motioned for Lyra to take cover behind a stack of metal crates. They waited in silence as a pair of Vanguard guards, clad in the same sleek armor he'd seen before, passed by. Once they were out of sight, Jason signaled for Lyra to follow him as they continued deeper into the base. Finally, they reached the central control room, a cavernous space filled with holographic displays and data terminals. Jason approached one of the consoles, scanning its contents and quickly realizing the extent of the Vanguard's plans. "It's worse than we thought," he whispered, his voice filled with urgency. "They have detailed records on every new civilization integrated into the galaxy, Earth included. They're planning coordinated attacks, targeting each planet's weaknesses." Lyra's expression darkened. "We need to get this information to the Council. If they see the evidence, they'll have no choice but to take action against the Vanguard." As they downloaded the data onto a secure device, an alarm suddenly blared, red lights flashing throughout the room. Jason's heart skipped a beat. Their presence had been detected. "Time to go," he said, grabbing the device and sprinting toward the exit with Lyra close behind. They raced through the corridors, their footsteps echoing as the base's security systems activated, blocking exits and deploying guards. Jason fought off a surge of panic as they ducked into a side passage, narrowly avoiding a group of armed Vanguard soldiers. "We're almost there," Lyra shouted, pointing to the hatch that led back to their ship. They scrambled through the opening, sealing it behind them and activating the ship's engines. As they pulled away from the asteroid, Jason caught a glimpse of the Vanguard forces emerging from the base, their weapons trained on the retreating vessel. "Hang on," he shouted, pushing the ship's engines to maximum as they raced back toward Althea Station. The Vanguard fired a barrage of energy blasts, each one dangerously close to hitting their ship. Jason maneuvered through the onslaught, his focus unyielding. Finally, they reached the safety of Althea's shielded perimeter, the Vanguard forces retreating as the station's defense systems engaged. Jason exhaled a shaky breath, relief flooding through him. They'd made it. As they docked and handed over the data, Jason and Lyra shared a look of mutual respect and understanding. They had uncovered a dark truth, one that would have dire consequences for Earth and the galaxy as a whole. But for now, they'd taken the first step in a battle that would determine the future of humanity among the stars. A galactic council divided. Back at Althea Station, the atmosphere in the Grand Hall had shifted dramatically. News of the Vanguard's hidden base and their plans for destabilizing new galactic members had spread among the council leaders, casting a shadow over the Unity Conference. Delegates who had once mingled freely now gathered in tense, whispered clusters, each group watching the others with a wary, guarded suspicion. Jason, exhausted but resolute, followed Lyra through the hall toward the council's main chamber. The data they had risked their lives to recover was now being analyzed by Althea's top security officers, and Jason could feel the weight of that information pressing down on him. Humanity's fate, along with that of countless other worlds, was now in the hands of an alliance that had never faced a threat of this magnitude. "Are you ready?" Lyra's voice was soft, but her gaze held an intensity that mirrored Jason's own. He nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be. But do you think they'll actually take this seriously? From what I've seen, the Council is more interested in protocol than in taking action." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "Some of them, yes. But there are others who understand the threat the Vanguard represents. They've seen the damage extremist factions can inflict. We just need to get through to enough of them to turn the tide." The doors to the council chamber opened, revealing a vast, circular room filled with rows of seating that ascended in tiers around a central podium. Alien delegates from every corner of the galaxy filled the seats, their faces a mixture of curiosity, apprehension, and skepticism as they turned their gaze toward Jason and Lyra. At the center of the room stood the High Arbiter, a tall, graceful being with translucent skin that shimmered with shifting hues. Their presence commanded respect, and even Jason felt a surge of awe as he approached, his pulse quickening in the silence. Captain Jason Miller of Earth and Lyra of Althea Station, the High Arbiter intoned, their voice resonating with a musical cadence that filled the chamber. You stand before the Council with evidence of a threat to our unity. Present your findings. Jason glanced at Lyra, who gave him a slight nod before stepping forward to address the Council. She spoke with a steady, clear voice, recounting the events of their mission and the chilling encounter with the Vanguard operative. As she described the extremists' plans to target newly integrated species, murmurs of alarm and disbelief rippled through the chamber. Finally, Jason stepped forward, holding up the data device that contained the Vanguard's intelligence. This device holds the evidence we gathered from their base, he said, his voice firm. The Vanguard of Purity is real, and they're more organized and more dangerous than we realized. They've already identified weak points in our systems and in the societies they plan to target. We're all at risk, especially those of us who are new to this alliance. A flicker of uncertainty passed over the faces of several delegates, but others seemed unconvinced. One of them, a tall, slender being with skin like polished metal, rose from their seat, their expression cold and disapproving. This is alarming information, to be sure, the delegate said, their voice laced with skepticism. But how can we be certain that this isn't a fabrication designed to manipulate the Council? Humanity is new to our alliance, and they have much to gain by creating a perceived threat to unite us under their influence. Jason clenched his fists, struggling to maintain his composure. Before he could respond, Lyra spoke up, her tone sharp. Councillor Varish, do you truly believe that Captain Miller would risk his life to fabricate a threat of this scale? He and I encountered the Vanguard firsthand, and I can assure you that this is no illusion. We were nearly killed retrieving this data. Varish's gaze shifted, unyielding. And yet, it remains true that humanity's entry into our alliance has brought complications. Their rapid advancements, their ambition, it's unsettling to some of us. Perhaps this Vanguard is simply a reaction to humanity's presence, a natural response to a species that seeks to spread its influence. Jason took a steadying breath, his voice clear but edged with frustration. With all due respect, Counselor, this isn't about Earth or humanity's ambitions. It's about preserving the integrity of this alliance. The Vanguard isn't targeting Earth alone. They're going after any species they see as a threat to their twisted vision of purity. If we don't stand together, they'll tear us apart. Another delegate, a stout, reptilian being with scales that shimmered in the dim light, leaned forward, his deep voice filled with concern. If what you say is true, Captain Miller, then this alliance is indeed in grave danger. But what do you propose we do? The Vanguard is hidden, and their resources are extensive. A direct confrontation could be disastrous. Jason exchanged a glance with Lyra, and she stepped forward once more, her expression resolute. The first step is to secure our vulnerable systems and tighten security across all sectors. We've identified several key points where the Vanguard could strike, and with the data we recovered, we can fortify our defenses. Another council member, a lithe figure with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim room, spoke up, her tone thoughtful. And what of those species already targeted? If the Vanguard intends to destabilize them, they will need protection. Are we willing to extend our resources to defend them? A tense silence settled over the room as the delegates exchanged uncertain glances. Jason could sense the hesitation, the fear of overextending themselves in a conflict with an unknown enemy. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence. I understand your concerns, he said, his gaze sweeping across the room. And I know that standing up to the Vanguard isn't a decision to be made lightly. But if we don't act now, If we don't show them that this alliance won't tolerate their extremism, then we're all at risk. Unity is our strength. It's the reason the alliance exists in the first place. If we let fear divide us, then the vanguard has already won. The High Arbiter raised a graceful hand, silencing the murmurs that followed Jason's words. They turned to the council, their gaze sweeping over the assembled delegates with a sullen intensity. The vanguard of purity poses a threat not only to our alliance, but to the very principles upon which it was founded, the Arbiter declared. We cannot allow them to undermine our unity. Let it be known that the Council will support measures to strengthen our defenses and offer aid to those most vulnerable. A wave of relief washed over Jason as the Council members began to voice their agreement. Even Varish, though visibly reluctant, gave a slight nod. The decision had been made, and Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose as he looked around the room. They had taken the first step towards standing against the vanguard, and while the road ahead would be difficult, they would face it together. As the council adjourned, Jason and Lyra lingered in the chamber, watching as the delegates filed out. Lyra turned to him, a faint smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You handled that well, Captain, she said. I don't think they would have listened without your conviction. Jason shrugged, a hint of a grin breaking through his serious expression. It's easy to stand up for something when you know it's right. Besides, I had a pretty good backup. They walked in companionable silence through the corridors of Althea, the tension of the council meeting slowly easing. Jason found himself thinking about the mission ahead, about the uncertain future that lay before him. He knew the vanguard wouldn't back down easily, and that their influence extended further than he had initially believed. But he also knew that he wasn't alone, that he had allies who shared his determination. Later that evening, Jason returned to his quarters, his mind still racing with thoughts of the council's decision. As he gazed out at the stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something vast and dangerous. The Alliance had chosen to fight back, but the vanguard was a shadowy enemy, one that thrived in secrecy and division. Just as he began to drift into a restless sleep, his communicator chimed, jolting him back to alertness. He answered, and Lyra's face appeared on the screen, her expression unreadable. Jason, I just received some troubling news. One of our key allies on the council has been attacked. It happened shortly after the meeting. The vanguard is already retaliating. Jason felt a surge of anger and frustration. Then we're already at war. Lyra's gaze was steady, a fierce resolve in her eyes. Yes, and we need to be ready for what's coming. As Jason ended the call, he felt a renewed determination settling over him. The vanguard had underestimated humanity and the Alliance, but they were about to discover that he would fight with every ounce of strength he possessed to protect his people and their place among the stars. The battle was just beginning, and he was ready to face it head-on, no matter what it took. Rallying allies. Jason stood at the observation deck of Althea Station, his gaze fixed on the endless expanse of stars stretching beyond the station's sleek walls. Only days had passed since the Council's decision to stand against the vanguard, yet already the Alliance was showing signs of strain. Rumors swirled through the halls about other attacks, other worlds now threatened by the shadowy extremists. Tensions had risen to a fever pitch, with delegates nervously watching their backs, fearful that anyone might be an agent of the vanguard. The night after the council meeting, Jason had barely slept. News of the attack on their ally, a council member who had been a strong voice in support of unity, had shaken him deeply. If the vanguard was willing to target even high-ranking officials, then no one was safe. And if they were this ruthless, he knew they wouldn't hesitate to use every means at their disposal to dismantle the Alliance from within. Lost in thought, Captain. Jason turned to see Lyra approaching, her expression serious but softened by a faint, weary smile. Despite her composed demeanor, he could see the strain in her eyes. They'd been working non-stop since the council meeting, briefing delegates, coordinating defenses, and sifting through the intelligence they'd recovered from the vanguard's base. Each new revelation seemed to heighten the threat, and the weight of responsibility was beginning to take its toll. Just trying to make sense of all this, Jason admitted. "It's hard to believe we're on the brink of a full-scale war." Lyra nodded, joining him at the railing. Her gaze swept across the stars, her expression unreadable. War isn't something this alliance has faced in centuries. Conflict has always been resolved through negotiation, through compromise. But the Vanguard doesn't want negotiation. They want dominance. Jason glanced at her, a question lingering in his mind. "How do you think they've managed to recruit so many followers? It seems like their ideals go against everything this alliance stands for." Lyra sighed, her shoulders tense. "Fear is a powerful motivator, Jason. The Vanguard preys on those who feel threatened by change, who fear that the influx of new species might destabilize their worlds or weaken their influence. It's an unfortunate reality, but not every member of the Alliance believes in the vision of unity as strongly as others do." Jason considered her words, understanding dawning. "So the Vanguard is exploiting that fear, turning it into hatred." "Yes," Lyra replied, her tone laced with frustration. "And they're using it to drive a wedge between us, to create division where there should be unity. If we don't find a way to counter their influence, they'll succeed in tearing the Alliance apart." A silence fell between them, heavy with the enormity of the task ahead. Jason knew that defeating the Vanguard would require more than just military strength. It would require an appeal to the ideals that bound the Alliance together, a rallying cry that would inspire worlds to stand united against the extremists. As if reading his thoughts, Lyra spoke up, her gaze sharp. "We can't do this alone, Jason. We need allies, strong allies who believe in the Alliance as much as we do. There are leaders across the galaxy who understand the importance of unity, who won't let fear drive them into isolation. But they need assurance, something to convince them that this fight is worth the risk." Jason nodded, an idea forming in his mind. "Then we'll give them that assurance. Let's gather the allies who are willing to stand with us and create a coalition of our own, one that will show the Vanguard that they're not as powerful as they think." Lyra's eyes sparkled with a renewed determination. "Then we'd better get started." They worked tirelessly over the next several days, sending messages across the galaxy to potential allies, diplomats, military leaders, and influential figures who had shown a commitment to the Alliance's values. Each transmission carried the same message: a call to arms, an invitation to join a coalition dedicated to defending unity against the Vanguard's tyranny. The responses came slowly at first. Some leaders expressed doubt, reluctant to involve themselves in a conflict that could threaten their people. Others, however, responded with unwavering support, pledging their resources and their loyalty to the cause. Soon, a diverse group of leaders had agreed to meet on Althea Station to discuss the formation of a united front. The day of the gathering arrived, and Jason found himself once again in the grand hall, surrounded by beings of every shape, size, and color. Unlike the previous council meeting, there was no air of formality here, only a shared sense of urgency and resolve. Lyra stood beside him, her expression a mixture of pride and anticipation as she watched the leaders take their seats. They had succeeded in rallying an impressive coalition. Representatives from distant star systems, generals from military strongholds, and even a few powerful corporations that saw the Vanguard as a threat to their interstellar commerce. As the last of the delegates settled, Jason stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady and clear. "We're here because we believe in something greater than ourselves, a galaxy where diversity is celebrated, where peace is maintained not through fear, but through understanding and respect. The Vanguard of Purity seeks to destroy that vision, but I believe we can stop them. Together." A ripple of agreement spread through the crowd, and Jason felt a surge of hope. These leaders represented worlds that spanned the galaxy, each with their own unique strengths. If they could unite, they might just stand a chance against the Vanguard's forces. One of the delegates, a tall, imposing figure with scales that shimmered like molten gold, rose to speak. "Captain Miller, we appreciate your dedication to this cause, but the Vanguard is not a foe that can be easily vanquished. Their influence runs deep, and their forces are scattered across the galaxy. How do you propose we counter an enemy that thrives on fear and deception? Jason met the delegate's gaze, his expression resolute. We start by proving that their ideology has no place in this galaxy. We'll protect the vulnerable worlds they're targeting, we'll expose their lies, and we'll show them that the Alliance isn't just an ideal, it's a reality. And if that means fighting, then we fight, but we do it together. Another delegate, a slender being with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light, spoke up, her voice thoughtful. And what of those who are already swayed by the Vanguard's message? If we confront them, won't we risk turning this into a larger conflict, one that could fracture the Alliance beyond repair? Lyra stepped forward, her tone firm. The Vanguard's message only holds power if we allow fear to rule us. But if we stand united, if we protect those who cannot protect themselves, we'll weaken the Vanguard's influence. They want us to be afraid, to retreat into isolation. We must show them that we're stronger together. The delegates exchanged glances, and Jason could see the uncertainty fading from their eyes, replaced by a fierce determination. He knew that this coalition was their best hope, a beacon of unity in a galaxy that threatened to fracture under the weight of extremism. After hours of discussion, strategies were formed and alliances solidified. The coalition agreed to coordinate their defenses, share intelligence, and provide support to any world targeted by the Vanguard. Jason felt a deep sense of satisfaction as he watched the leaders pledge their loyalty to the cause. For the first time since learning of the Vanguard's existence, he felt that they had a fighting chance. As the meeting drew to a close, Lyra approached Jason, her eyes filled with pride. "You did it, Jason. You've given them hope." He smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "I couldn't have done it alone. This coalition, it's just the beginning. We've shown the Vanguard that we're willing to fight for our future, and that's something they can't easily destroy." That night, as he returned to his quarters, Jason felt the weight of the coalition's trust resting on his shoulders. They had taken the first step toward uniting the galaxy against a common threat, but he knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. The Vanguard would not back down, and their next move was likely to be even more ruthless. Yet, as he lay awake, staring at the stars beyond his window, Jason felt a sense of hope that had been missing since the beginning of this journey. He had allies now, strong, determined leaders who shared his vision of a united galaxy. Together, they would face whatever trials lay ahead. And with each passing moment, Jason knew that he would fight, not just for Earth, but for a galaxy that deserved to be free from the shadow of fear and hatred. The Vanguard's days of unchecked power were numbered, and as long as he and his allies stood together, they would show the galaxy that unity was more than a word. It was a force that could not be broken.